Your soulmate is in serious trouble. My last urgent warning to you. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this is a fictional, faith-inspired story about the power of prayer, wisdom, and hope. Stay until the very end because what happened next changed everything. There are moments in life when the greatest danger is not something we can see with our eyes. Sometimes the real struggle is discouragement, fear, loneliness, or the temptation to give up. This story begins during one of those quiet seasons, when someone was carrying burdens that no one around them fully understood. Your soulmate had been smiling through difficult days, yet inside they were exhausted. They continued showing kindness to others, fulfilled their responsibilities, and spoke encouraging words whenever they could. But when the day ended and silence filled the room, they found themselves asking difficult questions. They wondered if anyone truly understood the weight they carried. They questioned whether the dreams they had prayed about would ever become reality. Although their faith remained, it sometimes felt as small as a flickering candle in the middle of a storm. Meanwhile, your own fictional journey was also teaching important lessons. You had experienced disappointments that shaped your character and seasons of waiting that strengthened your patience. Instead of allowing those experiences to make you bitter, you chose to become more compassionate toward people whose struggles remained hidden. You learned that every person you meet may be carrying a story you know nothing about, and that simple acts of kindness can become answers to prayers you never hear. Don't skip because something important is waiting for you. One evening, after another difficult day, your soulmate visited a quiet place where they often prayed. Sitting alone beneath the evening sky, they opened the familiar journal that had accompanied them through every chapter of growth. They slowly wrote, "Lord, you know every fear I have never spoken aloud. You know every burden I have carried in silence. When I feel weak, remind me that your strength does not depend upon mine. Help me continue choosing hope even when I cannot yet see the next chapter." After writing those words, they closed the journal and remained quietly in prayer. Nothing dramatic happened in that moment. No extraordinary sign appeared. Yet something within their heart began changing. The heavy burden they had been carrying no longer felt impossible because they remembered they did not have to carry it alone. Listen carefully. This changes everything. The next morning, your soulmate received a simple phone call from a trusted friend. "I've been thinking about you," the friend said warmly. "Would you like to meet for coffee? You don't have to go through difficult seasons by yourself." Those few words meant more than either person realized. During their conversation, your soulmate finally spoke honestly about the worries they had been hiding. Instead of judgment, they received compassion. Instead of criticism, they found encouragement. Their friend gently reminded them that asking for support is not weakness, it is wisdom. Sometimes God comforts us through the caring presence of people He places in our lives. Meanwhile, you spent the same day volunteering at a local outreach program, encouraging families facing difficult circumstances. An elderly volunteer quietly told you, never underestimate the value of one encouraging conversation. Sometimes a kind word arrives at exactly the moment another person is praying for hope. Those words stayed with you throughout the evening. Stay until the very end because what happened next changed everything. Over the following days, your soulmate began making small but meaningful changes. They spent more time in prayer, accepted encouragement from trusted friends, rested when they needed rest, and stopped believing they had to face every challenge alone. The situation around them did not instantly become perfect, but their perspective began changing. Fear slowly gave way to hope. Isolation was replaced by healthy community. Discouragement gave way to renewed courage. One evening they opened the journal again. "Lord," they wrote, "thank you for reminding me that the greatest rescue sometimes begins with a single conversation, a single prayer, or a single act of kindness. Help me remember that even in difficult seasons, you continue working through people who choose compassion over judgment and hope over fear." As they closed the journal, a peaceful smile appeared. The serious trouble that once seemed overwhelming had not been defeated by dramatic miracles alone, but by faith, wise counsel, honest conversations, supportive friendships, and the quiet assurance that God had never left their side. My beloved child, don't skip, because the next chapter will reveal how this renewed hope inspires both hearts to encourage others, reminding us that some of the greatest victories begin when we choose prayer, kindness, and faithful perseverance instead of giving in to fear. When the hidden battle came into the light. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this fictional, faith-inspired story now reaches a chapter where the greatest danger is no longer hidden behind a smile. Stay until the very end, because what happened next changed everything. After that quiet evening of prayer, your soulmate returned home carrying a small measure of peace, but the challenges they had been facing had not completely disappeared. They still woke up each morning with responsibilities to carry, difficult decisions to make, and moments when discouragement quietly tried to return. Yet something inside them had changed. Instead of fighting every battle alone, they had begun trusting God one step at a time. The next few days were filled with ordinary routines. Your soulmate went to work, greeted friends with kindness, and continued serving others whenever opportunities appeared. To everyone around them, they seemed calm and steady. But only God knew how much courage it took to keep moving forward. Sometimes the strongest people are not those who never struggle. They are the ones who continue choosing faith even while carrying heavy burdens. Meanwhile, your own fictional journey was unfolding in a similar way. You noticed that several people around you seemed unusually quiet and withdrawn. Rather than assuming everything was fine, you chose to listen more carefully, offer encouraging words, and pray for wisdom to help others. You had learned that compassion often begins by simply noticing when someone needs kindness. Don't skip, because something important is waiting for you. One afternoon, your soulmate received another message from the trusted friend who had encouraged them earlier. "How are you really doing?" the message asked. Not the answer you give everyone else. The honest one. Those simple words touched something deep within their heart. Instead of pretending everything was fine, they replied honestly. "Some days are better than others. I'm still learning to trust God instead of my fears. Thank you for not giving up on me." The friend answered almost immediately. "You were never meant to carry every burden alone. Let's keep praying together and encouraging one another." That conversation reminded your soulmate that God often provides strength through faithful friendships and caring communities. Listen carefully. This changes everything. Later that evening, your soulmate attended a small gathering at their local church. The message shared that night focused on hope during difficult seasons. The speaker said. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is choosing to keep walking with God even when the road feels uncertain. Every step taken in faith matters, even when progress seems small. Those words felt as though they had been spoken directly to the heart. Your soulmate realized that the true battle was not against impossible circumstances. It was against the temptation to believe that hope had disappeared. The moment they rejected that lie, their perspective began changing once again. Meanwhile, you spent the same evening encouraging a family member who had been facing their own challenges. You listened patiently, offered comfort without judgment, and reminded them that no difficult season lasts forever. As you walked home beneath the evening sky, you quietly prayed that everyone carrying hidden burdens would find renewed strength and faithful companions along the way. Stay until the very end because what happened next changed everything. Before going to sleep, your soulmate opened the familiar journal and wrote, Lord, today you reminded me that asking for help is not weakness. It is an act of trust. Thank you for placing caring people in my life who point me back to hope when I begin losing sight of it. Continue teaching me to become someone who offers that same encouragement to others. They closed the journal with grateful hands. Outside, the night remained peaceful. The stars still shone above, reminding them that even when clouds appear, the light has never truly disappeared. The circumstances had not changed overnight, but the heart facing them had grown stronger through faith, prayer, honest conversations, and the support of people who genuinely cared. My beloved child, don't skip because the next chapter will reveal how one unexpected act of compassion inspires your soulmate to become a source of hope for someone else, proving that those who receive encouragement often become the very people God uses to encourage others. The moment your soulmate chose faith over fear. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this fictional, faith-inspired story now enters a chapter where the greatest victory is not found in escaping every problem but in refusing to let fear become the loudest voice. Stay until the very end because what happened next changed everything. After weeks of carrying hidden burdens, your soulmate noticed something surprising. The circumstances around them had not completely changed, yet the heaviness inside their heart no longer held the same power. Every prayer, every encouraging conversation, and every reminder of God's faithfulness had quietly rebuilt the hope they thought they had lost. One morning, before the sun had fully risen, your soulmate stepped outside with a warm cup of coffee and watched the first light slowly brighten the sky. The silence felt different now. It no longer reminded them of loneliness. Instead, it reminded them that every sunrise is evidence that God faithfully brings light after every night. They whispered a simple prayer. Lord, I don't know everything that lies ahead, but I know you have never abandoned me. Help me keep walking in faith even when I cannot see the entire road before me. As those words left their lips, a quiet peace settled over their heart. It wasn't a dramatic miracle. It was the steady confidence that comes from trusting God one faithful step at a time. Don't skip because something beautiful is waiting for you. Later that day, your soulmate noticed a new volunteer at the community outreach center looking discouraged and overwhelmed. Instead of walking past, they remembered the kindness that had once been shown to them. They introduced themselves, offered a welcoming smile, and spent time listening without interrupting. The volunteer finally admitted, "I've been carrying so much pressure that I forgot it's okay to ask for help." Your soulmate smiled with compassion. I understand that feeling more than you know, they replied. Someone reminded me that we were never meant to carry life's burdens alone. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is allow others to walk beside us. Those simple words brought visible relief to the other person's face. Listen carefully. This changes everything. As your soulmate continued serving that afternoon, they realized something remarkable. The encouragement they had once desperately needed was now flowing through them to someone else. The comfort they had received had become the comfort they were now able to give. In that moment, they understood that God often transforms our greatest struggles into opportunities to encourage others facing similar challenges. Meanwhile, your own fictional journey continued with the same quiet faithfulness. You spent time visiting someone who had been feeling isolated, offering encouragement without expecting anything in return. During the conversation, the person quietly said, "I almost lost hope this week. Thank you for reminding me that I don't have to face everything by myself." Walking home that evening, those words stayed with you. You realized once again that the smallest acts of compassion often become the greatest gifts. Stay until the very end because what happened next changed everything. That evening, your soulmate returned home and opened the familiar journal. For several moments they simply looked back through the pages filled with earlier fears, unanswered questions, and heartfelt prayers. Then they turned to a fresh page and wrote, "Lord, today I finally understand something you have been teaching me all along. The difficult seasons were not meant to destroy my faith. They were preparing me to strengthen someone else's faith. Every tear taught compassion. Every delay taught patience. Every unanswered question taught trust. Thank you for never wasting any part of this journey." They gently closed the journal and looked through the window toward the evening sky. The stars appeared one by one, shining quietly against the darkness. For the first time in a long while, your soulmate no longer focused on the trouble they had been facing. Instead, they focused on God's faithfulness that had carried them through every difficult chapter. My beloved child, don't skip because the next chapter will reveal how one unexpected opportunity opens a brand new season of hope, reminding us that after hearts are strengthened through faith, God often uses them to bring courage, peace, and encouragement to many others. When God turned the struggle into strength ***. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this is the final chapter of this fictional, faith-inspired journey. Stay until the very end because what happened next changed everything. The difficult season that once seemed endless slowly began to fade. The circumstances did not disappear all at once, and life did not suddenly become free from challenges. Instead, something far greater happened. God had transformed a fearful heart into a faithful one. The person who once felt overwhelmed had become someone who could now encourage others with genuine compassion because they understood what it meant to struggle and still keep trusting. As another peaceful morning arrived, your soulmate opened the curtains and watched the sunrise fill the sky with light. For the first time in many months, they no longer felt trapped by worry about tomorrow. Every new day had become an opportunity to thank God instead of fearing what might happen next. The hidden battle that once felt impossible had become a testimony of God's steady faithfulness through every step of the journey. Don't skip because something beautiful is waiting for you. Later that week, while volunteering at the same community outreach center, your soulmate met someone quietly sitting alone with tears in their eyes. Many people walked past without noticing, but your soulmate recognized the expression immediately because they had worn that same expression not long ago. Instead of continuing with their own plans, they gently sat beside the person. "I don't know everything you're facing," your soulmate said softly, "but I do know this: you don't have to carry it by yourself." The person looked up with surprise. "No one has asked me how I'm really doing in a long time," they whispered. For nearly an hour they talked, prayed together, and shared hope. Before leaving, the person smiled for the first time that day. "Thank you," they said. "Today you reminded me that God hasn't forgotten me." Your soulmate quietly smiled, realizing that the encouragement they had once desperately needed had now become the encouragement they were able to give. Listen carefully. This changes everything. That evening, the trusted friend who had stood beside your soulmate during the darkest days sent one final message. "I've watched how much you've grown." The person who once believed they were falling apart is now helping other people stand again. Never forget what God has done in your life. Reading those words brought tears of gratitude, not tears of fear, but tears of thankfulness. Meanwhile, your own fictional journey continued with the same quiet faithfulness. You remained committed to serving others, speaking words of hope, and living with honesty and kindness. Although your paths had been different, both stories carried the same lesson. God had been shaping two hearts through ordinary faithfulness, preparing them to become sources of comfort for people who needed encouragement. Stay until the very end, because what happened next changed everything. That night, your soulmate opened the familiar journal one final time. Turning through the earlier pages, they read every prayer written during moments of uncertainty. They remembered the fear, the loneliness, the waiting, and the countless questions they had carried. Then they turned to the final page and slowly wrote, "Lord, thank you for never leaving me, even when I believed I was walking through the hardest season of my life. Thank you for every friend who reminded me to keep believing. Thank you for every challenge that taught me compassion, every delay that strengthened my patience, and every quiet moment that drew me closer to you. I now understand that you were not only bringing me through the storm. You were shaping me into someone who could help others through theirs. Let my life continue reflecting your love, your mercy, and your hope wherever you lead me." They gently closed the journal, placed it on the shelf, and smiled. Not because every question had been answered. Not because every challenge had disappeared. But because they had discovered a lasting peace that circumstances could no longer take away. My beloved child, as this fictional, faith-inspired story comes to its close, remember this timeless truth: every season of hardship can become a season of growth when it is placed in God's hands. The greatest miracles are often not the dramatic moments we expect, but the quiet transformation of a heart that chooses faith instead of fear, forgiveness instead of bitterness, and hope instead of despair. God's love does not promise a life without challenges, but it reminds us that we never have to face those challenges alone. As the stars filled the evening sky and another peaceful day came to an end, your soulmate stepped into the future with renewed courage, grateful for every lesson that had shaped their heart. The trouble that once seemed overwhelming had become a testimony of resilience. The fear that once controlled every thought had been replaced by trust. And the story that began with an urgent warning ended with lasting hope, quiet joy, and the assurance that God's faithfulness had been present through every chapter. The journey was no longer defined by the darkness of yesterday. It was defined by the light of faith, the strength of compassion, and the peace that comes from walking one faithful step at a time. And that beautiful truth became the beginning of every hopeful chapter still waiting to be written.